Woohoo, look at all this going live. Welcome, Wayne. Welcome, Wayne's Otter and Nandini. And how would you say that name, Ben? Melee? I'm be glad to hear your name. Welcome to everyone. It's great to be here.
Thank you all for being here and thank you for joining us. We'll just give people a moment to get into the room, and thank you all for being here. We're so excited you all have signed up to spend a little time with us. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And we're just getting our last ducks in a row.
Going live, sharing about podcasts and books. It is great to be here. Welcome to our masterclass.
All right, and yeah, as you're all are here, please feel free to drop into the chat where you're from, where you're dialing in from today. Because we always love to know our global people are out there. So glad to have you here.
Oh. I have happy clicker. You just never know what's going to happen when Donna's in charge. So much fun. San Francisco.
Yeah.
And we have Richmond in the house. Richmond, Virginia. And Ben, you're soon to be off to Spain.
Yes, exactly. So I'll put Spain as well.
There you go.
December 5th. Awesome.
Yeah.
A couple more people joining us.
Aloha.
Aloha. Miley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That helps both of us.
Miley, yes. Chicago. My daughter's in Chicago. Welcome. The Windy City. India. You've come a long way. Gail, another Richmonder. Good to see you.
Right, a few more people joining us.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we'll wait till everyone's in the room before we get started.
All right, Kimmy, welcome. Gail, welcome. So many people. Edith, welcome.
How exciting.
Yeah, this is really cool. And welcome to all the people who are going to be watching this in replay as well. We have you in our hearts.
Yes.
Cool. So let me take a look at the time here. So Donna, hey, why don't we get started?
Ready to kick it off?
Yeah, and thanks to all of you for being punctual, and so glad you're here. So Donna, over to you.
Yeah, in case you're wondering where you are and why you're here, this is a masterclass on Don't Die with Your Story Inside, how to avoid the 10 biggest podcast and book mistakes. I'm Donna Cundy, and I'm joined by Ben Joya. Glad to be presenting to you some of the things that we've noticed working with our clients and in our own journey about how to, the things that kind of just show up there and that can be avoided in the podcast and book world. We promise that in our time together, you will know how to avoid the 10 biggest mistakes so you can amplify your message and voice and live your purpose. So what does this mean to you? It means that you're going to skip the bad decisions that cost most people a dozen years and a couple of $1 million at least. You'll understand the power of the champagne glass pyramid, one of my favorite things to share about, and you'll guarantee that your podcast or book will work before you start recording or writing. And then we're going to dig in and you're going to create podcast show notes, Gail, and choose your best stories for your book. We want you to save the date. Yay, Miley, I see you dancing. Save the date. The podcast and book roadmap is coming up in, how much time is that, Ben? Just like next week, I think. We're right around the...
We're 9 days away from that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later because we want to get into the content. But yeah, November 4th and 5th, it's coming. And yeah, we're really excited about that too, if you can't tell. So Donna,
thanks. So what do we want you to do? We suggest that you take notes, remove distractions, close the door, shut down Facebook, Twitter, all the little notifications that you get. Put your phone on do not disturb, turn off all instant messengers, tell your loved ones that you're going to be back in just a few short minutes. Shoot fort, it's only words. And be fully present in just this moment. We had this opportunity to speak with another influencer this past week, and they were talking about this idea of showing up, taking all the notes, but really the action is in the relationship. And so you're building a relationship with this new ideal and this new idea of a podcast and a book in your life. And so we want to remove all of those distractions just for a few short minutes. It's time the world hears your story. Sit back, relax, smile. If you can't tell already, Ben and I, we like to smile, we like to laugh, and we encourage you to do the same in this time that we're spending together.
Yeah, and Donna, I just want to piggyback real quick. So if you remember nothing else today, smiling will change your life, right? Like we smile when we're happy, of course, right? But we can become happier, or we can at least lighten our minds when we smile, right? Neurobiologically, if I can put all those words together. And what I like to say is the light mind is the right mind to write. So as much as you can today and for the rest of your life, just smile, keep a little smile on your face, keep relaxing, because sometimes the book stuff, the podcast stuff, sharing your voice can stir the pot a little tiny bit. So yes, it's time the world hears your story or hears more of your story. And, you know, it's a good opportunity to smile through all of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Smiling is good. Laughing is even better. So do both, lots of it. First, we'll dive into avoiding the biggest mistakes in the podcast world. And I'm going to be presenting that. So who am I? I am Donna Cundy. I am a podcast and radio host. My station, IBGR Network, is heard in 184 countries. Co-authoring a book called The Influencer's Formula with the lovely Ben Joya here today. Over the years, you know, in 2020, I decided to start a radio station with a man named William Eastman. And in 2023, where we are right now, in this process, I have helped produce over 14,000 podcasts. My podcasts have had over 775,000 downloads. So there are business owners around the world who are resonating with this methodology that I want to share with you today. And several of the podcasts have actually been in the top 100, which is exciting for me to see with these podcasters. You can probably imagine that after listening to about 14,000 podcasts, there might be some patterns. And it was the patterns and it was the consistency that I was seeing of what worked and what didn't work that made all the difference in how I put this methodology together. There's some other things about me that you can read on here. I don't like to actually talk a whole lot about myself, so I'm going to move on now and talk about the 5 biggest podcast mistakes. Why do I want to do this? Well, because I made a lot of mistakes along the way when I first started. I had done a vision board and it had some microphones on it, and I kind of looked at myself in the mirror and said, you're going to do a podcast. And I laughed when I said that because I was raised to be seen and not heard. And so as I was getting ready to start my own podcast and to get into my own microphone world, I noticed these top five common mistakes. And I see them that they're so common that I see them with my hosts, even as we're bringing them along. And so the first big mistake is just using a computer microphone. I hear this a lot, especially on Zoom, that, you know, well, it sounds fine. It sounds fine. The microphone sounds fine, but it doesn't. You want to have that next level of quality as you're recording your your podcast. I'm thinking, like, I have AirPods on right now, and it's that good, better, best idea of a microphone situation. I guess if the only thing that you have is your computer microphone, then go ahead and use it. At least you're amplifying your voice. Better than your computer microphone would be AirPods or some kind of a plug-in microphone to your computer. And then the best is like a Yeti or a Rhodes microphone, you know, the good, better, best of using a microphone. But we want to definitely add some kind of an upgrade to the microphone system than just using your computer. So that's the first biggest mistake, is that yes, you need a microphone, but don't get so confused on which one to use. Again, I'm using AirPods, and it is that next level of what to do. The second big mistake is speaking extemporaneously. And that's my book coach there, putting that word in there. I said speaking off the cuff. And Ben said, well, that's extemporaneously. I can't even say that word. It's a big word. Don't speak off the cuff. You want to actually sit down, think through what you want to say. You want to have, becoming a person worth listening to is taking the time to map out. What do you want to say? When do you want to say it? How do you want to say it? Not just for the time that you're behind the microphone, but also every time you get behind the microphone. What if you mapped out a whole quarter of what you want to say? So every time that you had the chance to do a podcast, you were speaking in a logical way that left little breadcrumbs so that you're taking your listener on a journey. Number 3 big mistake is not publishing or distributing your podcast. When I first started, I said, well, I'm going to do Facebook Live. And they stayed on Facebook Live, and I think they're still probably there because Facebook never loses anything. But then I was like, okay, I finally, I can't even remember what platform it was, but I joined one platform on how to do a podcast. I didn't know anything about what I was doing. I might have recorded something and it stayed on my computer. And I see this a lot, that it is a big mistake where yes, you got your microphone. Yes, you've thought about what you want to say. And yes, you've recorded something, but then maybe it stays on the computer. And so, you know, what happens after that? We want to make sure that we're actually publishing, that we're putting that out there for the world to hear. Mistake number 4, I would say, is not being on a schedule, not doing a content calendar, not producing consistently. So you want to make sure to be consistent as you go. Set a timer for yourself, set a calendar for yourself, set an appointment for yourself, and then show up to publish so that you can build a following. They know when you're going to be distributing the next one. And then number 5, assuming that if I build it, the listeners will come. And yeah, maybe friends and family might show up for something like that, but you're going to want to have a strategic way of building your listeners. And so I would say that those are the top 5 biggest podcast mistakes that I see. Next, we're going to avoid the biggest book mistakes, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to Ben Joya.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. I appreciate that a lot. I know we're doing a little fire hosing here of information, but really want to get the most important things across. And you know, if there is a replay, right, for all of y'all who are here, so you can always, you know, fast forward through to anything that you missed, or if you need to spend a little more time with it. You know, obviously we can't do all the things we want to do and change our entire lives in 90 minutes, but we're going to do the best we can. Right. So I am going to talk about the biggest book mistakes. There are 5 of them as well. Donna's going to do the slides. Donna, thank you very much. And before we get into them, though, let me tell you a little bit about me to give some context. So a lot of things are really thanks to my book, right? Having written my second book, so many things changed for me. And, you know, after about 10 years of struggling as an entrepreneur, you know, being super broke, all these other kinds of fun life things, like too many drugs for too long, right? Finally got my act together, got my business act together, got my spiritual act together, you know, and now get to do things that I love. So some cool things that I get to share these days. I've trained more than 100 millionaires at Stanford and in Sydney, Australia, thanks to my book. I wrote that book in 5 weeks, by the way, because I promised books at a speaking event that I hadn't written. you can do that too. I helped a Fortune 100 company create and develop a mindfulness and empathy video game. This was with MIT, and we did it for 20,000 global employees. And this is because somebody found me on LinkedIn thanks to my book. My book wasn't even finished. I had the cover of my book up, and somebody found me, and that started the conversation. And as you know, or as if you've come across me before, hear me say over and over again, right? It's all about the relationships, right? Your book is about relationships. Book launch is about relationships. Podcast is about relationships. Everything you do is about relationships and comes down to relationships, because it's, ultimately the human being who's going to say yes to you, right? So social media is great. Advertising is great. All the things can be great, but how are you developing relationships with people, right? So that's some of the stuff that, led me on the way to being a 4-time international bestselling author, podcast and international radio show host, thanks to Donna Gundy here. I have 39 years of writing and publishing adventures. Like, I've wanted to write a novel since I was 12. Launched the world's biggest magazine, or at least at the time, AARP. Created the first mindfulness program for the ALS Association. And this is like 20 years ago, 22 years ago. So nobody was really talking mindfulness back at that point, and got to get those amazing teachings into the hands of, people and caregivers and families and stuff. Something that was really formative in my life, as you can possibly imagine, was facing death 4 times in India in the space of 72 hours. So bus almost going off a cliff, running from a wildfire, encountering a poisonous snake, and then encountering a mountain lion. It was much more gruesome and harrowing than I just described it. Really came, came back from that experience with such a dynamic, verve, gratitude for life, and extra galvanized purpose, right? To want to serve the heck out of people. And at some point in there, after all the drugs that I mentioned before, I found my way to rock bottom. And by the way, if I've gotten to this level of success, I'm saying this humbly, right? If I've gotten to this level of success with all the drugs and all the idiocy that I have cultivated in my own life, you can totally do this with your hands tied behind your back, right? Really, really take my word for it. When I hit rock bottom, it was after my first visit to India. I was like, what can I do? And I was like, I'm going to go back to India. Crazy, man. So I went back and ended up hiking through the Himalayas for 9 days. But due to, continuous human error on my point, I showed up with bad hiking boots. So I had to get my bad hiking boots fixed, because nobody has a size 13 shoe in India, at least that I know of at this point. And ended up with 2 of the biggest blisters you can imagine on my Achilles tendons for basically 144,000 steps over 9 days for like 6 or 8 hours a day. And that really was a drag and gave me such a gift, because day 6, I saw the beauty around me. I was like, why is everything so beautiful? I'm not on drugs. And I realized that all of those painful steps, like everything, ow, 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 ow. Like after I got over all of like the judgment and the self-loathing and all those days and days of that, I suddenly went, oh my goodness, I've been in the present moment for like 5 days. And I had never had that kind of experience before. It changed everything. Not to mention that understanding, which took me 12 additional years, stubborn guy sometimes, the difference between pain and suffering, right? We can have pain in our lives as human beings, and the suffering is ultimately optional. I mean, some people will say, well, this, you can't avoid suffering here. I'm not saying we can unchoose it in all situations, but most of the time we can. And especially, in the context of bringing forth, our books, our business, our podcast, our message, right? We don't have to suffer through it, right? And that's why I said at the beginning, the smiling and the light mind, right? A light mind is the right mind to write. A light mind is the right mind to lead. Really, really important as well. So Donna, if you can slide me up. Thank you. So the 5 biggest mistakes, right? So this program, this masterclass, is the 10 biggest podcast and book mistakes Donna did the 5 on the podcast. I am doing the 5 on the books. So first biggest mistake, assuming there's not enough time, because most things we don't have enough time for. We feel like we don't have enough time for, and there is enough time to write your book, right? It doesn't have to take years. Doesn't have to take soul purging and suffering and alcoholism, right? You can get your book done. The method I teach, right, you can have a manuscript in as little as 5 weeks. And it's like, well, how do we do that? Right? We do things like, get really good focus on your book by having conversations with your ideal client about the book you're writing, right? Get the answers from the horse's mouth, right? Follow a blueprint, follow a timeline, use dictation, because you can speak 1,200 words in 7 minutes. Let me say that again. You can speak 1,200 words in 7 minutes, and that's 1,200 words of your authentic voice. Unedited, sure, but there's no hesitation, no punctuation, no worries about, is that the right word? No, it's not. You're an expert in your stuff. You're going to teach your stuff, and it's going to come from here, right? That's your authentic voice. If you're like, I'm not a good writer, doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. And part of this, not enough time, is one of the many drawbacks of using a traditional publisher instead of professional self-publishing, right? So huge mistake. Donna, you can go to 7, thanks. Huge mistake that people make. Most of us grew up believing that traditional publishing is the way to go. So for people like us, speakers, leaders, coaches, consultants, subject matter experts, entrepreneurs, small business owners, I might have said that twice. You do not want a traditional publisher, right? Traditional publisher will take your intellectual property. They will own your book. They will take 90% of your royalties. You might contractually have to sell X amount of books in X amount of time, right? And then if you don't sell all of those books in all those times, you have to buy back the books from the publisher. I've heard stories where authors have to buy back books to the tune of $40,000. Right? Because you didn't sell enough of your own books, right? And the publisher is giving you a hard time for that, right? So the answer is self-publishing, professional self-publishing, right? Use a company, like my friend and colleague, Chris O'Byrne, Jet Launch Publishing, they've done 14,000 books, 14,000 different titles at this point. They've been around for 16 years, right? Have a professional do your book. Don't do this on your own, right? Self-publishing is a weird kind of moniker because it's a little misleading. Self-publishing does not mean do it yourself. Not yourself publishing, right? Non-traditional, right? Don't give away your book. Don't give away your message. Don't give away your voice, your freedom, your flexibility, and any aspect of your business, especially to a traditional publisher. You're not going to get a book advance. They're not going to do the marketing for you. Really, really, really important, all of this. Thank you. Donna, can we move to 8? Thank you. Assumptions, right? What happens when we make assumptions? I'll let that one, I'll leave that ellipsis there for a moment. Right? So assuming the book will work because I'm an expert and I have good content. It won't. No offense. 99% of the time, your book, because you're an expert and because you have good content and you just put it in your book, it's not going to work. Your book will not be successful if you do that. You're like, but wait, I'm an expert in my stuff. I worked really hard. I have a PhD, or whatever, years of time in the trenches. I've helped thousands of people. Yes, but if you don't think and learn, collaborate with somebody who can help you navigate both the art and science of writing a book, the book is not going to work. Right? And, putting all the right things in the right places. Really, really important. Right? There's certain stuff that goes in the front of the book, the middle of the book, the back of the book. Right? You need to help the reader understand that they're in the right place, that you're using their actual words. Right? You're writing about what's important to them, what they want, and not just what you think they need. Right? I said earlier on this call today, right? Have conversations with your ideal clients about the book you're writing, or for that matter, about the podcast you're creating. Let those people tell you, right? Don't ask for their opinions. That's a dangerous and slippery slope, right? But have conversations with your ideal clients, understand their pains and challenges and goals and dreams and stuff like that. And that's going to give you the lens for your book, right? And then your expertise and your good content is filtered through that lens of what people tell you. You understand the distinction here? You're still going to put what you know people need in the book. 100%.
I can't find any. I can't hear anything. No, I can't hear anything. What a pain in the ass.
Donna, maybe you can message with Dale. Thank you. So yeah, so don't do that, right? Make sure you're following a method, a timeline, a plan. Use a blueprint so you don't have to figure out what goes where. And talk to your ideal clients about the book you should be writing, and think of the strategy with your book, right? Like, what do you want your book to be a bridge toward, right? Because your book by itself is not going to be the answer. You're like, I'm going to sell 100,000 books. No, you're not. No offense. I love you. No offense. You're not, right? The people like us, we're going to make a much greater impact from the relationships that come from the book rather than the book sales themselves, right? People buy books, they skim, they scan, they don't read whole books. If they buy them electronically, right, they might not even open them, right? So think of the relationships, right? I like to ask a quick math question, right? How many books do you have to sell to make 100,000 bucks? Right? If you use a traditional publisher and they take 90% of your royalties, you have to sell like 80 or 100,000 books to make $100,000, right? And I'm just using dollars as an easy example here, right? Because we're about dollars and impact and creating freedom and better life for everyone. But from my example, I'm just going to use dollars, right? So do you want to try to sell 80 to 100,000 books? Like, that's time, money, energy, hassle, and who knows if anybody's going to do anything, right? Or you make $100,000 by selling 0 books instead. Wait, what? Yes, sell 0 books, right? Get your book done, get them printed, get hardcover versions. Doesn't cost any more money to do that. Get hardcover versions of your books, send them to your ideal clients. Develop relationships with them. 1 to 10 to 20 of those people can get you to that $100,000 much faster, much easier, much more enjoyably, and with a far greater transformation for themselves, or their companies and or the people that they serve. Cool. So mistake number 9, Donna, if you can move us forward. Assuming my book won't be unique because I have nothing to say. You absolutely have something to say, because there's nobody like you. There's nobody who's had your skill, experience, expertise, hard-earned wisdom. There will never, ever be anyone like you again. So even if you do something that, is, say, really, really straightforward, like tax preparation for, just this, small group of people, like, yes, you can write a book uniquely because your stories really are what make the difference. And number 10, to take us home, assuming, right? Or assuming again, don't assume that I can't make money before my book is published. People think they can't use the book until the book comes out into the world. Baloney. As soon as you have the concept, the idea for your book, you're like, I'm going to write a book. Start telling people you're going to write a book, right? You're the forthcoming offer of a book about X, right? You don't have to have the title yet. You can even say, I'm writing a new book, related to my business. I'm not going to say much more about that right now, right? But start letting the benefit of that credibility factor, be part of the mix. Okay, awesome. So those are my 5 mistakes, the 5 biggest books mistakes that I see the most. And Donna, I think we have some some light bulbs.
The light bulb moment. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. And thank you all for being here, for asking the questions. I've been kind of working on the chat in between, in the meantime, and around and about. Continue to add your questions to the chat, and Ben and I will answer them as best we can throughout the masterclass. We can only go so deep in this 90 minutes that we're here together, but that's not why the light bulbs are showing on the screen right now. The light bulbs are showing on the screen because as Ben and I were putting this together, I had the light bulb moment to say, you know, we are the product of each other's products. And I know that when I was writing a book with Ben, I was like, oh my gosh, like I had these light bulb moments, as I call them. And I wanted to share 3 of those. And then maybe, Ben, you'll share a couple of the ahas you had when you did your first podcast. So for me, the very big one when we were working, Ben, was when you told me it's just a book. You said, Donna, it's just a book. And I kind of stood back a minute because I was like, no, it's not just a book. This is me. This is my passion. This is my purpose. This is my life. This is all my life. And you said, smile, it's just a book. And I said, what do you mean by that? And really, Ben, what you were saying is get out of your own way. You were telling me to get out of my own way, that the book is a vehicle to tell a story, yes. But sometimes when we get so focused in on the details, when we get so focused in on things, that we forget that at the end of the day, it's just a book. It's just a podcast. It's just a thing. And it's a vehicle for us to tell our story. The second thing that was a big aha, Ben, was that the book is strategic. And you were just talking about that in your top 5 book mistakes, that yes, you can write a book about your life story. You can write a book about all these valid things, about all these valid ideas. But when you're writing a book, Ben, or when I'm writing a book with you, I'm doing it strategically. That there's a formula and a format, and then there's this part to it, and there's that part, and when this goes together here, and we put that one over there. And so the book is strategic, and it's strategic in a way that leads to number 3. You were also talking about this in the top 5, that you can get clients and strategic partners before the book is published. That that blew my mind. As you and I started working together, and we were talking about how can we best serve clients, we realized that marketing is a big thing. It's that M word that nobody wants to talk about. But you can start marketing before you have finished your content. You can start marketing. And that's what I did when I got ready to write this book, is you had me go out to do that marketing piece. Then we do the content, and then I'm marketing again. And so it's this idea of not focusing so much on the book because it's just a book, but how are you going to use the book? So those are my top 3 ahas in the book world. Thank you for those.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for giving voice to those. Yeah, it's pretty amazing what you can do with the book and what you can do with the podcast. And, you know, Donna and I had met end of 2021, sometime in 2021, where I was actually in Italy at that time.
Yeah.
You know, we just, a lot of resonance, a lot of, you know, aligned around values, wanting to make an impact. And, you know, and then about a year later, we worked on a podcast together, and, you know, this is how we ended up writing our book and doing all the, you know, coming here and having us all gather here today. But, you know, the things that blew my mind and also really helped me understand how much alignment there was, right? And how we could, not just Donna and me, but just any of us, to understand these things, how we can do our business so much more optimally, right? You know, attract more revenue, make a bigger impact, and make it easier on ourselves, right? Because I don't want to work harder to, you know, make things better. I want to work smarter to make things better, right? And work less, gosh darn it. So things that came up for me, and Donna, I learned this from you, because a lot of people who show people how to do podcasts don't do what Donna does. Donna and her team at IBGR, they have people create a radio show that is a podcast. Like, it literally is the same thing, right? So, you know, radio shows are recorded, And it's not like, okay, we're going to now turn it somehow magically into a podcast. It's like it's just a matter of slicing and dicing essentially, and a little extra text here and there, right? That literally a global radio show that reaches 183 or 184 countries is a podcast, that can come out in the world later in time without like, any appreciable extra effort. And then that all equals, 80% of a book, right? If you've done a podcast, you've done like 80% of the content of a book, and vice versa. If you've done a podcast and, it's helping you be successful, then that's 80% of a book that is going to work and help you to continue to be successful, right? So radio show equals podcast equals 80% of book. That's some cool math that I discovered from you, Donna. Thank you so much. The second thing, when you have a roadmap, for your actual podcast episodes, like Donna helped me map out a roadmap, a little redundant, create a roadmap. But I knew exactly what to say because we did, what is it, podcast live, right? So Donna and I recorded the episodes and we didn't edit them. So we mapped them out and we knew our time limits, and then we spoke not extemporaneously, we spoke within the confines of our show notes, which you'll see a little bit more later today. And like, I never worried about, oh my God, we're doing it. We recorded 13 one-hour radio shows that got turned into 52 podcast episodes, right? All in 13 weeks. And I never sat there going, I don't know what you're saying, right? Because we had the roadmap and we had the show notes. So that was absolutely incredible. Right. So, whatever y'all can do, and not just in terms of podcast and book, but, what can you do in your life? What can you put it in part of your business and part of your life where you don't have to think about the thing to get it done, right? Or where you can minimize the psychic load, the energetic load, right? What can be habitual or attached to other habits you already have in place, right? Because the more we can, save up the juice, the more we can make use of the juice and enjoy it. And the third thing, I kind of said it already, but just, in 90 days, 13 episodes, had at least a year's worth of content, right? We had 13 weeks of radio shows that got turned into 52 podcast episodes, and then you turn all of that into, all sorts of other things, marketing content, a course, right? We talked about the champagne glass pyramid, right? Some of you might have been wondering about that. But if you think about a champagne glass pyramid, if you've ever seen that at a wedding or on video, right? When people fill up the champagne glass pyramid, they are not starting from the bottom, right? They're pouring champagne into one glass at the top. That one glass at the top is your book or it's your podcast. And then everything comes from there, logically, in an aligned kind of way, right? So when, you use your book and turn it into something else, or you use your podcast and turn it into something else, like, what the path to follow. Like, that's how it's set up in the book already. Like, I know what's going on. Like, I'm just going to go a little deeper here, or I'm going to go a little more shallow here, right? So the book is like your, it's like knowledge management for yourself. Right? It's like your curriculum, your stuff, all the things. I do this all the time. I'm like, how do I talk about, that thing in my program? Like, I go back to my book, right? How do I say that thing? I know I have a list of that. So yeah, those are my three things. So Donna, thank you. And on we go.
On we go. The digging in now to show notes and stories. So this is, I think, really the heart of the masterclass piece to it. Thanks for sharing your insights, Ben, and for allowing me a moment to share mine, because it really was that big moment of like, holy cow, aha, that put all those things together, and now is part of what we call the influencer's formula, which is about being seen, being heard, being easy to follow in order to position you as the solution. Ben and I have this belief that if you have it on your heart to write a book or to create a podcast, ultimately it's because you want to be seen as the solution in someone's life. You have a story to tell, you have some experience to share, and you want to make it an easier path for whoever it is that's going to connect with and resonate with your story. And so that is really how the influencers formula is built. It's this three-legged chair of marketing to be seen, content creation to be heard, and then marketing again to be easy to follow, so that you are positioned as the solution. Was there something else you wanted to say on this, Ben?
Not right now, only because, I mean, I want to say like hours worth of things, but
yeah, we'll move on. we're gonna dig into show notes. This is where you might want to take some notes on show notes. This is the framework for show notes. It's very simple. There's a title, then there's 5 elements, which is the hook, the why, the what, and the take action. You also want to include a bio, a call to action, and some tags. And you can see this, you can read this, you can implement this, but here's where the magic happens. When you have somebody to mentor you through this, it really makes it a lot easier to implement. And so this is how they will look when they are put with your podcast. This is how they will look when they're in your interactive ebook. This is the order of things, but this is not how you create them. This is what I tell my hosts. Start with number 2 of those 5 things. Number 2 is, why is this important? It's your promise. It's your promise to the listener. They're exchanging their most valuable asset, one of them, which is their time, that most people never have enough of and want more of and can't get more of. And so there's a season promise. I say a season. Ben was talking about 13 weeks of transformation from point A to point B. And it's, if you listen over these 13 weeks, you're going to get this. And if you listen to this episode, you're going to get this. This is the promise. This is why. Start with why. Simon Sinek, thank you for that. Start with why. So you want to write the why first. Then you get to talk about all the things that most people like to talk about, is what you need to know. We all like to share what we need to know. I tend to be very detail oriented and go very deep into that. So then this is where you're going to write what the listener needs to know about this topic. You're going to say what they want them to do, all the action steps in order to have this thing. These are all the things you have to do. And then you're going to end the episode with a take action. Do this one thing now. This is your breadcrumb. Do this one thing now. And you're going to be moving along towards the promise of the episode. When you have those 4 things written, you want to go back and write some kind of a hook, which is a quote or a story or a statistic or some kind of joke or humor. You want it written in the show notes, because it will actually show up when people are scrolling through your podcast. They're going to listen with their eyes first before they listen with their ears. I'm going to say that again. Your potential listener will listen with their eyes first, then they'll listen with their ears. So this is one of the scroll stoppers here, is this hook. And then the title, you write the title based on all of the information you gave in 1 through 5. And you want it to be something that you think that they're already searching for, because again, they'll listen with their eyes first. And so the first thing that they'll see is the title that'll make them stop. Then they'll see the hook that will make them lean in. And then they're going to want to listen to your voice. And when you have those 5 things written out, that becomes what you talk about in your podcast. Start with the title, then you go to the hook and you just read it off, but you don't write it in the order that it's going to be read off. Start with why, then go into your comfort zone of what they need to know, then write the detailed steps of what they need to do, give them something to take action, write the title, and then of course, put a small bio in there so that you show your credibility. You can put a hyperlink to work with you, book a call, whatever, in your call to action, and then some tags so that you're findable in all of that. Yes, the simple show notes formula, again, this is what they'll look like. But when you're writing them, you're going to write it a little bit out of order. And Ben, you were saying, well, should we do this where they just get one step at a time? And I said, no, I want you to see the big picture of all of this, because the mentoring that I'm giving you that I only give to my hosts, but you get it now here, is what order to start with, what order to put them in the show notes. I see what you're saying here, Ben. I'm pretty much wrapped up my piece to this, unless you want to go into a little bit further. It's really that fast forward, is that straightforward. Every episode, this is how you create the actual episode before you sit in front of the microphone. This is how you write it. This is how they go together, because there is a written piece to a podcast, and then you speak it. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. No, I was so excited because, you know, we're ladies and gentlemen, et cetera, we're a little ahead of time, which is great. So, you know, we have about 10 minutes, 9 minutes now. So why don't you all, you know, take a moment and whip up a podcast episode, right? Just, you know, take 9 minutes or 8 minutes. Actually, why don't we, let's do the, I'm going to set the timer for 8 minutes. So follow the prompts, follow what Donna said. If you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. And yeah, this is the rolling up the sleeves part of the adventure. 8 minutes, go make a podcast episode.
And start with why. Why do you want to talk about that one?
4 more minutes. 4 more minutes. About 90 seconds. Okay, 1 minute, please start wrapping it up. Last keyword, last bullet points. Thirty seconds. And please start coming on back. Come back on video if you're not already back on video. Thanks for doing the work. Thanks for writing a podcast episode. Congratulations.
Just a
And
podcast.
what's that?
It's just a podcast. Like
It's
you
just
said
a
to me, it's just a
podcast.
book. It's just a podcast.
It is. It is. Thank you for saying
Very
that, Donna.
good.
Yeah, that's a really great reminder. And also the reminder too that look how much you just accomplished in 8 minutes, right?
Mhm.
Doing what some people describe as deep work methodology, in the words of Cal Newport. Or just for the rest of us, like set a timer, don't get distracted, do the one thing and tear it up. Try to get a little bit more done than you think you can. Just try, right? Not as a way to set up yourself for failure and judgment, but just try to do a little bit more than you think is possible in that X amount of time, and use that little bit of what's called eustress, EUSTRESS, to your advantage. And then when timer goes off, you're done, walk away, go do a little dance and pat yourself on the back.
Mhm. Yeah, and thanks for that also, because they're simple show notes. So this is not War and Peace. This is not your book. This is not any of that. It's just a guide, a framework to know what to say.
Exactly. It's easily changeable. This is not permanent ink.
Nope.
Awesome. And as we get into the next slide here, want to make an invitation to all of you. Sorry, I'm one step ahead of myself. Donna, you can go to the next slide. But I forgot we had this other important part to talk about because I got so excited about the podcast, but the stories, right? So thinking in terms of your stories, right? Very often people, talk about stories and the importance of stories, and you got to share your story and your signature story and, your must to success story. And there's all this pressure of like, oh, do I have a good story to tell? And of course you do, first and foremost, but it's also really important to remember all the different types of stories that there are, right? So Donna, if we can look at the next slide, please. This is something that I teach in my book, in several of my books, and in a lot of my content, right? Stories are not just about you, right? We love you, but they're not just about you. So, stories can be, of course, your signature story. Those are really important and powerful, and are great for books and great for keynotes and all those kinds of things, right? But talking about your mess to success moments, whether they're life changing or just, interesting enough to help you make a point about something or teach a little wisdom. Yeah, any kind of detours that you've experienced in your business, in your life, that you can share that wisdom about. Sharing about your successes, right? These are all stories that can be told, and they don't have to be pages and pages and pages, right? Look at Twitter, 280 characters, and there's a whole story in there, right? If you've ever come across 6-word stories, there are books of 6-word stories out there. What Kentucky trash heap yields unexpected flour by somebody named John Kurtz. That's a 6-word story right there, right? So you can do a lot in a little space, right? Remember that as you think about all these different kinds of stories. Case studies are stories about your clients, about your experience, right? Use studies, like all of those kinds of things. Testimonials are little tiny stories, or longer stories if they're long testimonials, right? Those are stories. Anecdotes about your colleagues, your customers, your clients, your audience, like not to be mean, right? Not to infringe on anybody's, or impinge, one of the two, on anybody's privacy, right? But tell stories. People were human beings, we're storytelling beings, right? Before the cave paintings and the writing on the walls, literally, right? We're telling stories around the fire, right? So tell stories about your people, about the people you serve. Talk about their successes, their challenges, their goals and dreams, right? Give voice to them and their experience. And when you do that, your best people are gonna hear you because you're using their words, you're telling their stories. Like, oh my God, you know exactly what I'm thinking. You're using the words that are in my head, right? And if you're smart, you're not guessing those words. You're actually having conversations with your ideal clients, right? About the book you're writing, or about the podcast, or about the story, that also these conversations inform the stories you want to include, in your book, in your marketing, in your podcast, right? People's other experience of you. Sometimes that lens is helpful, or of your company, your brand, stories about your brand, right? Things that in the news, history, literature, culture, something that happened on the bus last week, right? And then stuff about your purpose, your guiding principles, how you help make transformation and results happen, right? Speak your truth, speak your authentic voice, and speak to your best people in their words. I mean, use your words too, but make sure to use your words in and among your words. Okay, so what I invite you to do is, excuse me, let's take 8 minutes as well, to be fair. Take 8 minutes and just sketch down a bunch of ideas of stories. Right? Don't think of every single story you have, but just what pops out to you. If you're like, signature story, what would I tell? Just put some bullet points down. Master success moment, what would I tell? Or what couple of stories would I tell? Just put some things down to jog your memory and think of and recognize, get on paper, digital paper, recognize, all the stories that you have in your fingertips, that you can use in all aspects of your business. Okay.
Like I tell my coaching clients, whatever comes to mind, write it down, because you don't know where it would lead. Like I would say, if chocolate chip cookies is coming to mind, write that down, because that's your starting place, and then move on. So let's just get it all out of your head and get it onto paper.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. We'll see you in a little bit. Hey, by the way, if you need to run to the restroom or grab some water, feel free to do that now. There's also going to be another opportunity to do a little reflection, which will be another, reflective time that you can pop out in a couple minutes. So just some options for you. 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Coming up on 90 seconds. Okay, coming into 30 seconds. Last keywords, last bullet points, and the trust that you will remember everything you need to remember. All right, come on back. Everybody, if you're not smiling, please smile. Take a few deep breaths. Shake it out if you need to shake it out. Move the energy if you need to move the energy. Because we're doing a lot of deep work here. Thank you very much. You're doing a lot of deep work here. Thank you very much. So Donna, if you can move us to the next slide, por favor. So really important. We've been moving really quickly. What are you discovering? What are your biggest ahas, insights, takeaways, surprises? Please spend the next 3 minutes and just jot down the biggest things, right? We talked about podcast and book mistakes. We looked at show notes, then we looked at book stuff, story stuff, right? What are your biggest ahas, insights, discoveries, takeaways? Feel free to add questions to that list if those are coming up. We'll see you in 3 minutes. If you need to make a bathroom run, this is also a good time. 2 minutes. One more minute, please. Okay, please wrap it up. Last 30 seconds. Gail, you're very welcome. Scheduled focus time is very important. We've been doing that all throughout this event, and you've been doing that by choosing to come to this event, so thank you. And hey, everybody, would love to hear from each of you with a request, 30 seconds maximum. Not just because I'm a pain in the butt, right? But because this is really, really good practice to be able to, drill down to the most important thing and stay in the space of time, especially when you're doing speaking. Right? Really, really important. When you're speaking on a podcast, really, really important. You're giving a talk, really, really important. So 30 seconds, feel free to unmute yourself and please share. What are your biggest insights, ahas, takeaways? Donna, let's unshare the screen for the moment so we can see everybody's lovely faces. And please share what are your biggest insights, ahas, takeaways.
I'll go ahead and start. This is Wayne.
Thanks, Wayne.
So starting with the why in the show notes and preparing a podcast, it helped me understand, and I thought through it this way. The hook is the attention grabber, but getting the why is what will get people to stay longer than a few seconds. So the hook just gets them started. But if you don't have a good why, if you don't tell them right away, this is the value you're going to receive. I mean, you're going to lose them. So that's why you make sure that's first, because you can have clickbait all day and people stay for 2 seconds.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Wayne. Spot on. Who's next? 30 seconds, please. Kimmy, yes, please.
I'll go ahead and go. It was probably over 40 years ago. I knew I was destined to do something, but I just didn't fully realize what. And over a period of time, I've realized I think the world is ready for a reset, including changing paradigms, reimagining hope, enjoying some along the way. And I've been writing daily in a journal for many, many years. Didn't know what to think of it until Ben and I talked. And a friend of mine was looking at it the other day, and he said, sounds to me kind of like chicken soup for the soul meets the far side. So without getting into copyrighted arrangements or anything, that was a verbal expression of description, not going to be written down, but there we go.
Awesome. Beautiful, Kimmy. Thank you so much. Who's next? 30 seconds.
I'll go.
Thank you, Miley.
Good morning. Aloha, everyone. My biggest takeaway was the amount of stuff I got done in the 8 minutes. I mean, who knew you could get so much done in 8 minutes? So thank you for that.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you. Who's next? 30 seconds.
I'm always the one jumping in first. So people, I waited a while here not to be sucking up the air in the room. What is most important for me as I walk through this over and over again is just the realization of what it is. Your last question, how do I help make transformation results happen? And I have, my ego is big enough to fill the room, but I'm always hesitant to imply that I was responsible for the change. I mean, I know I create a safe space for people, but owning what it is that I do that helps other people achieve what they do, finding the right language. I made all kinds of notes here, but that's still my challenge for being able to own that language. I have no question I can help people, but be able to articulate it to them. It's most of what I do is just repeat what people say about me as opposed to saying it myself, but I need to find a way to do that. So thanks for just refocusing. Thank you.
Pleasure. You're very welcome, Gail. And thank you so much. Dale or Edith, what do you got? Neither? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you.
Oh, Dale's going to go.
I'll go for it, sure.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm
I thought my apologies. I thought I saw two head wags, not just one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gail and Dale.
Yeah,
I'm
Dave.
brand new to this, so I was a little ahead of myself, but it was so good to see how you're doing things and how you're working with each other. So I definitely know I have to be with a group of people who are doing this in order to learn it the right way. So thank you. That's my biggest takeaway on that one. The why, that was the biggest thing.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Dale, thank you so much. And thank you all so much. This is great. And we are coming into our last about 11 minutes here. So Donna, if you can bring us back to slide land.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and just, you know this, we all know this, right? And this is not to poke your FOMO, right? But other people are going to finish their book, publish their book, do their podcast this year. Like, why not you? Really, really important. And we want to help you do that. And we have a great suggestion that's coming up really soon. So Donna, if you could tell us a little bit more, and I will jump in and piggyback on your lead.
Okay, is this lead?
Yeah, that's the very one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, can I set this up just a minute? Can I take a minute to
Yeah.
just set this? Okay, cool. Because, you had mentioned
Absolutely.
earlier, Ben, you had mentioned about how there was overlap in how we had met and how it had resonated. And I just want to take a quick minute to talk about the don't die with your story inside. Because when you had mentioned that to me, when we were doing our podcast about, and that's part of your messaging, don't die with your story inside. From a book writing perspective, it hit home with me because of a book that I read from John Maxwell. And it takes it a little bit further. And I just want to read a little bit from the book, because when you say don't die with your story inside, well, why is that important? And it's really about potential, if you think about it. And what John had written in the introduction is that potential is one of the most wonderful words in any language. It looks forward with optimism. It is filled with hope. It promises success. It implies fulfillment. It hints at greatness. Potential is a word based on possibilities. Think about your potential as a human being and you get excited. At least I hope you do. What a positive thought. I believe in your potential just as much as I believe in mine. Do you have potential? Absolutely. And here's the overlap. This is my point right here. What about unfulfilled potential? That phrase is as negative as the word potential is positive. My friend Florence Littauer, a speaker and author, wrote a story in her book, Silver Boxes, about her father, who always wanted to be a singer but never was. She says he died with the music still inside him. That's an apt description of unfulfilled potential. Not reaching your potential is like dying with the music still inside of you. And as a performing musician, I spent 20 years on stages around the world performing for the United States Army. That part there about dying with the music still inside of you was like, it tugged at my heart. And it's really was my motivation for being where I am today. And so when we talk about the podcast and book roadmap, when we talk about not dying with the story inside of you. It's really about fulfilling potential. And that's what I wanted to say about that. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I'm so glad. It's so funny. As we were preparing this presentation, like kind of, how the often 25th hour is when something amazing happens, right? You're like, oh wait. And Donna, I'm so glad you thought of that paragraph. That was such a beautiful addition to this. So thank you.
You're welcome. So again, start soon, the podcast and book roadmap. It is a simple way to create a global thought leadership masterpiece in just 6 to 9 months. It is the deeper dive into what we've done today. And it is an invitation to spend a couple of days with us, not just a couple of minutes, not just an hour, but a couple of days going even deeper into the work of fulfilling potential. Ben, you want to go through some of this?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So, some or most of you probably go under, fall under the heading of being a leader, even if you don't call yourself that, right? A consultant, a coach, a speaker, a trainer, entrepreneur, a small business owner, a subject matter expert, right? Maybe you have several of those titles, so what Donna and I were thinking about in terms of the podcast and book and roadmap was to help you do and get and accomplish the most important things for your podcast and or book, right? So getting more leads, clients, and impact, right? Whether it's launching, rebranding, or amplifying your business, right? Podcast or book is great for that. And this idea of ROI right now, right?
Yeah.
Return on investment right now. So even before you're done, starting to attract those leads and clients and develop those relationships, which is what we've been talking about through this whole process. So Donna, if you could do next slide, that would be great. So just a couple of big things, and you can see all the details, the extra details at podcastandbook.com. This is November 4th and 5th, so not this weekend, but next weekend.
Oh gosh.
Yep. Yeah, and if you can't make it live, there's a way to get replays as well. We'll talk about that in a moment, but right, important stuff, attracting revenue, making an impact before the podcast is done. So we're going to be talking about ROI right now throughout the weekend, as we go deeper into the influencers formula. Next slide, Donna, please. We're debunking the biggest myths, mistakes, misperceptions. So you learned a little bit of that stuff today. So some things you might hear at the event and be like, oh, I know this already. We're going to ask you at the event to show up with a beginner's mind, right? Because you're going to learn more things, even if you've heard them already. That's the magic of this whole process. And literally, we want to help you skip the bad decisions that cost people a dozen years and a couple of $1 million at least, right? If you make the wrong choice for your podcast or book, right? If you're like most people, like you're not going to fix that. You'd be like, oh, I spent all this money and I wasted time. And then you finally, don't ever get back to it, or it takes a long time. Like there's a way to skip all of that, both, in the writing process and the book development process, and understanding, how to not basically have to mortgage a child to get your book published. Donna, next slide, please. And, if you haven't gotten this impression from us or the other people in the room, right, this is all about making a meaningful impact with your book, podcast, TV talk show, and one that you are proud of, right? That's really, really important, right? Because, let's love it. Let's love the stuff we're doing. So I want to shoot you into the future for a moment, right? So imagine not waiting around for the final chapter or the last episode, right? Because the influence, the income, the impact is happening before you're finished, right? That's really important. We'll talk about through this on and on. We've talked about this today. Don't ever forget this, even if you never see us again, right? But we look forward to seeing you on this weekend, right? So having that top quality book or podcast, like opening up that package in the mail and you're like, holy crap, that's my book. All right. Like, or turning on, a radio station, and hearing your podcast, your global radio show syndicated that gets turned into a podcast, on your favorite channel, like all of that stuff, helping you stand out, right? And standing out, yes, it's helpful for our business. Yes, it's helpful for the income, but it's about the impact, right? The financial freedom, the time freedom, the creative freedom, like imagine all of that stuff. So, this weekend is a great way to, the expression might be dip your toe in the water, but it's more like, dunk your head and cool off and see all of the magic that can happen. So much good content. And Donna, feel free to go forward here. We'll, really encourage you to come, right? $47 for the ticket for the weekend. It's virtual, it's online. You can do it in your pajamas and your bare feet, right? The whole deal. Absolutely worth it. 2 amazing guest speakers. Not going to talk too much about them today, but a publisher of 16,000 books, right? Somebody who's going to be teaching about TV talk shows, which is a whole nother aspect that we didn't get into, right? And you'll see on the next slides that, yes, you can get the ticket, but we also have a VIP ticket available. VIP ticket is great, of course, for the recordings, right? If you can't make it, or if you can't make it the full time, you have access to all the recordings, for the rest of your life, lifetime access, right? And the bonuses. So $1,723 worth of bonuses, right? So literally the podcast training for how to get your book done. That's the first one. The second is the book assessment. Like, is your book going to work? Like, answer the questions. You'll figure out what to do. How to introduce yourself in 30 seconds on video. It works well even if you're an introvert. Reviews and testimonials are super important for your book, for your podcast, for LinkedIn. So there's a template for how to get them super easily. Next slide, Donna, please. Thank you. Resting is good. So ways to rest, even if you only have 5 minutes or a minute. The expert storyteller is, the longer details of, what we did of choosing your stories today. The event recordings, which I mentioned, and 2 extra bonuses, FAQ and action guide for audiobooks, right? You don't have to worry about them yet, but they can be a good future strategic addition to your, platform of excellence. And the last part, you heard me say this, but you are crazy if you publish your book by yourself, right? Professional self-publishing does not mean do it on your own. So get the VIP ticket. You have all the freedom and flexibility. You have all the bonuses. And Donna, if you can go to the next slide. So the VIP upgrade, right? 1723. And next slide. Right now is your time, because it's only $147, right? So check out all the details at podcastingbook.com. There's more information about the program. We didn't talk about everything, but we will say to you, there is just one thing to do, just like anything, any great accomplishment, right? Just begin, right? Go to podcastingbook.com, get your ticket today. You're absolutely going to love it. Donna, I think we might have one more thing to say, right? Get your ticket today and sleep better tonight. That's a big important part of this. Get your ticket today and sleep better tonight. So Donna and I want to thank you so much. We are finishing at 1 minute before the official end time. Donna and I are both going to stick around for any additional questions that you might have, right? But we wanted to make sure we were honoring our commitment to you for the 90 minutes. So if you need to split, that's totally cool. The Q&A will be in the recordings. You can also message Donna or message me with follow-up questions, but just come to the event. Like, don't screw around, right? I say that with all the love. Come to the event, don't screw around. This is really, really important. Donna, can you unshare the screen, please? Awesome. So anybody, any questions, anything we can clarify for you before we call it a wrap, whether it's about today's content or about the event November 4th and 5th. There is a 2-hour gathering on November 3rd that's optional, but it's a nice way to come warm up the room together. And then Saturday and Sunday, November 4th and 5th, it's just 6 hours each day, right? So we don't have you in for 12 hours a day, nothing crazy like that. And you'll absolutely love it.
I have to run, guys, but thank you. This was time well spent. And Don, I'll talk to you on Thursday. Ciao, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Gail. Take good care. Bye. Awesome. Anybody else? Questions? Oh, bye, Wayne. Bye, Kimmy. Okay. Last 3. Any questions? Any comments? Anything y'all want to give voice to? Okay, I think
Thank you so much, everyone.
We are complete. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you again soon. See you at the event. Bye.